As the clock ticks away, a new ransom deadline is looming yet again, with captors allegedly having asked for $6 million, according to local Tucson station KGUN 9 News. And investigators have returned to Nancy Guthrie's home, searching what appears to be some sort of drain pipe. One of the most bizarre true crime stories that we have ever covered, or I think anyone has ever covered, just continues to get even stranger.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, SDS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the global phenomenon. Don't call it a show. Don't call it a podcast. It is a global phenomenon, bringing you the very best guests in all of true crime, with something like 50-plus countries represented in our community, the best community in all the YouTubes. Now, it is 8 days since the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's mother. I have a good friend. He's a meteorologist at KVOA in Tucson, and we were talking late last Sunday night when this was going on, and I never thought it would get this big, but I said, hey, Matt, this is going to be a huge story. If I knew exactly how big it would get, I probably would have been on a plane if my wife wasn't dragging me out of the country this past week for someone's birthday. But here we are. Again, this time last week that reports were circulating, and once again, we're dealing with ransom deadlines, new demands, intensifying searches, even as the Pima County Sheriff has reiterated yet again, there are no persons of interest or suspects in the case. So what is going down? Here to help us break it all down, you know this guy, Phil Ramos, retired homicide detective, 3-time Officer of the Year, undercover narcotics at one point, and he has been with us for much of the ride, and truly honored to welcome our next guest, an American hero who we thank for his service. This is Dan O'Shea. He is retired commander with the U.S. Navy SEALs. Dan, I was friendly with Ryan Zinke, who I'm sure you're much better friends with. And he told me when I interviewed him at the Capitol when I was at Fox News, first of all, the guy's got bear paws for hands, biggest hands I've ever seen. Number two, he was showing me his sword collection. And number three, he told me you don't call a Navy SEAL commander a Navy SEAL commander. You call them like at Navy SEAL or something along those lines. Why is that? What is that?
I think he's referencing lieutenant commander. So you don't call a Navy lieutenant commander that. You just call him commander. I don't know about that at thing. I've never heard that, but I think it's once you make 0405, they just call you commander. And frankly, I could have gone on if I'd gone on one more rank. I would have made captain. To me, commander sounds way better than captain, especially to a civilian. And in the Army and the Marines and even the Air Force, captain in the Army or Air Force and Marines is an 03, like a Navy lieutenant. So I think I retired at the right rank, and I'll just stick with commander. But
yeah, what do I know? Commander sounds a lot better to me than captain. And then we've got another retired federal public servant here, Bernard Zaper, retired ATF special agent in charge. I really do consider these guys American heroes. I don't say that lightly. These guys put their life on the line for the country in many different ways. And a guy like Dan O'Shea has, I'm sure, a mind built much different than most of the rest of us. So thank you all for being here. Let's just get right to it. Dan, I'm going to start with you. I mean, your expertise, and tell us, I guess it's through the Navy SEALs, but your expertise in part is negotiations, hostage negotiations, and also retrieval. How did you become a specialist in that? And give us your kind of macro thought of what we are witnessing here.
So again, just because you're a SEAL, you're trained in hostage rescue. You're not trained in negotiation. Fact is, SEALs are pretty infamous for saying when reporters are trying to go, well, what do Navy SEALs do in terms of like trying to do cultural advising to locals on the ground, saying Iraq and Afghanistan, and the blunt response was, man, we're not here to do negotiations. We're here to take out subjects. But my career is very unique. I was an active duty guy from 91 to 98, did 3 platoons at SEAL Team 3, post platoon commander 2, where I moved on like a lot of my peers. And the only reason I came back in was 9/11. I was mobilized for 2 years at U.S. Central Command. I went into Baghdad with the General Tommy Franks and the invasion. And on my last assignment, at the end of these 2 years, I accepted one more set of orders to go to Baghdad with the FBI. Ironically, I flew in the FBI team, included a bunch of HRT guys, hostage rescue team, and I was an interagency liaison. I was living with the FBI. I had a desk at the U.S. Embassy, and I had access to the intelligence community. And I was just supposed to coordinate between all diplomatic, the diplomacy, diplomacy, intelligence, military, and law enforcement. And ultimately, first day on the job, it was July of 2004. This was about a month or two after the Nick Berg capture and beheading. And I go to a morning meeting with an ambassador, and his chief of staff came to the last item about 2 Bulgarian truck drivers have been kidnapped. Some guy named Zarqawi was threatening to cut their heads off unless the Bulgarians pulled their troops out of Iraq. President Bush called the president of Bulgaria, said, you're a member of the coalition. We'll do everything we can to get your hostages back. And 2 envoys were flying in that day at noon. And I was the chief of staff, literally looked at the only military guy in the room and said, Dan, you're a Navy SEAL. Go call your friends. And that became not a 4-month set of orders, but the next 22 months I spent in Baghdad. We had 448 kidnappings, international, hundreds, thousands more local kidnappings. And then we had 40 Americans taken hostage. So for 2 years in the furnace, I learned at a fire hose. I ended up meeting these K&R consultants that were coming in from the UK, working for companies like Control Risk Group. And they were negotiating on behalf of families and corporations were dealing with these high profiles. So I got a fire hose, indoctrination. And then ultimately, many of the cases I would be advising governments and or family members on these cases live. And some of which, one of the last cases I worked, a young Iraqi girl who worked at the embassy, her brother had been kidnapped. And while she's in my office at the U.S. Embassy visiting with me, I'm trying to advise her how to handle these kidnappers and deal with the hostage demands and this, that, and the other. And while she's in my office, the hostage takers called her and to negotiate a demand. And I watched this young 19-year-old Iraqi girl, like a lioness. She's speaking in Arabic. I don't really understand what's saying, but I get the gist of the conversation. She's arguing with them, trying to say, hey, my brother is a good Sunni. He's a good Muslim. All the things I was telling her, distress in her conversation. And all of a sudden the phone hangs up on her. And she looks at me and she just has a sense of resignation, but not sorrow or pity. She just says, they say tomorrow we will find my brother's body on the airport road. And then they hung up on her. And that airport road was the infamous Route Irish, where the suicide bombings were happening literally every day. Wow. And I simply looked at the girl and I just said, Samaya, be patient. This is the game they're playing. They're trying to terrorize you. They're making you do anything you can to get your brother back. But if you agree to a ransom number that your family can't pay, they're going to kill your brother. You have to come to an agreement on what you can pay, what the family can bring together. And they were asking at the time for $100,000. I said to her, what could the family logically bring together? She said, well, we're school teachers. We don't have money. Maybe we could sell a car, maybe $10,000 is what she said. I said, well, that's the number. I said, you can't settle on something else. And all of a sudden, a minute goes by, the phone rings again. It was the kidnappers. She hangs up the phone and looks at me and she said, now it's $50,000. I said, Samaya, this is the game. This is how this works. And had the kidnappers found out she was in the U.S. Embassy talking to a Navy SEAL who's running the hostage working groups, they would have killed her brother.
Wow.
And
wow.
And the ironies of ironies, and again, I was juggling multiple cases at once throughout my 2 years. And I came back from a trip on another hostage case, a German national that had been kidnapped in northern Iraq. I just got back into Baghdad and my Iraqi cell phone popped up. And this was about maybe 10 days after the girl and I had met. And we'd met a couple more times. And all of a sudden I get a text from her basically saying, and with a little video clip, about a 30-second video clip of her brother driving up in a car and then coming out into the street, and her entire family was there to greet him, and they're all crying, and obviously because they got him back. And she said, what did she say? She said, we paid $6,500 and we gave them our van, we gave them our vehicle, we got my brother back.
Wow.
Praise Allah and thank you, Mr. Dan. And so it's just, I've been where those families are. It is gut wrenching. Kidnappers are savage. And they're savage all over the world. And I used to wake up over my morning coffee, and I'd have to watch beheading videos almost weekly and sometimes daily. And some of those were families that had been in my office 2 days, 3 days prior, pleading, for advice and whatnot. So I worked with kidnapping cases from the street, from the Iraqis on Iraqi kidnapping, Sunni on Shia, vice versa, and then why they would target, say, journalists or target a French national. And like again, I got a 2-year PhD in the process. And again, subsequent to that, I've gotten to spend time with K&R consultants, some of that worked some amazing cases. The Proof of Life movie with Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
I not only met the guy that the story was based on, Thomas Hargrove, who was held hostage for about 14 months by the FARC. I met David Venn, the control risk guy that had helped negotiate his release. Of course, at the end, they didn't do it. The Russell Crowe attacked the target and rescue. Everyone wants to think a hostage rescue scenario is ideal, but in reality, you want to negotiate a settlement. If you can do that, it's safer for the hostage and safer for all involved. But getting back to this.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, you got some real. Thank you for that. That was a wild story. But Dan's got some real boots on the ground experience. I mean, let me ask you, just so we get the other guests. But quickly from a macro perspective, do you believe that this is in fact a hostage or kidnapping situation with a real ransom? Is this the real thing going on right now?
No, I don't think this is a kidnap for ransom. Even though there has been a ransom amount, I heard today it was $6 million, and that Savannah says she might pay it, but there is no. These guys, I think they're going after. This is a kidnap for extortion. They're extorting her, and I think they're putting Savannah through this terrible experience. They want the media exposure. I don't think the ransom will lead to anything, and the fact that they're considering paying without getting proof of life is going to be a huge mistake. And this is unlike any case I've ever worked. And I mean, I know we got some homicide experience on the channel here. This is probably more in their line, and I'm very fearful about the status 8 days later about Mrs. Guthrie, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you for that input. Again, if you're just joining us, Dan O'Shea is a decorated commander with the Navy SEALs, and obviously very well versed in hostage negotiations and situations. But Bernard, to you. Thank you for coming back. With the technology we have today, it's maddening they can't figure this out. Thank you for the super chat here. Great panel. What do you guys think is really going on here? Love you, Joel, and your mom. Thank you. Great panel. What do you guys think is going on here? I love it. She asked you know what? That's what my mom does. She asked the question twice. I think you did that out of respect to her. Bernard, what is going on here? And let me caveat by saying we'll show you a photo. They are back, or we're back at Nancy Guthrie's home today, and they were looking through what can only be described as this, like a pothole, a manhole, is how Detective Phil Ramos described it. But what about all this technology, Bernard Zaper?
I mean, I wouldn't even speculate being on the public between, being on this side of the veil between the investigation and public information, because, now we have this exorbitant whodunit speculation that's going on in the media and social media, all of which is just really noise, because we don't know what the investigators know, other than the fact that, they're returning to the scene multiple times and things that are happening. Those are not based on a hunch. There's things that are triggering that for two purposes. One, which they have to eliminate any possibility of something that comes up. They can eliminate it and move on to something else, or there's something specifically they're trying to find that is giving them cause towards something else. And so, again, I don't want to allow myself to speculate, because I think that would be unprofessional, not knowing what's going on in the case. However, you only have to think about a kidnapping in the United States. It is not where we'd have the infrastructure of, say, if you had an international kidnapping where that's a trade in a way, right? People do that continuously in certain parts of the country, and there's an apparatus there, as was mentioned. And so here, there's no apparatus for that. For example, how funds would be exchanged if there was that. How was proof of life given? Because whoever's involved in this, if that was actually the case, they know that the chances of, dare I say, proof of life given without revealing location or something that's going to be tangible that investigators are going to jump on, it puts them at great risk for being detected. So that whole thing makes that very implausible and that makes it difficult. But I would say on the investigative side, they're getting and generating information that's probably coming from, yes, a mix of technology and the fact that they're parsing through so much information and tips and noise, but they can't be dismissive of it. And so they're doing the things to either codify it or eliminate it as soon as possible. And the things that are codified, then they have to run that down until it's exhausted. And I believe that's what's going on. They're leaning into other agencies with other specialties for this, and certainly leaning into technology to do the same thing and write it, because the time is so critical as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Phil Ramos, I'm going to put the photo back up. I mean, this is really your world here. Homicide was called early on here, and there was a bit of semantic debating about what that means. And Phil Waters was speaking to a guest the other day saying, look, it doesn't mean that there's necessarily a murder, but homicide was called in. What's going on here in this photo? This appears to be a manhole. I'm sure you know the terminology a lot better than I do. Someone was saying it's a septic tank, which I don't think it is. But what's going on? What's with the pole? Are they looking for remains here? As difficult as that is to ask.
Yeah, I would imagine what's at the end of the pole would be a flashlight or some sort of light source, because it gets pretty dark down there. It's going to be part of the sewer system. There's nothing there to indicate to me that they planned on going in there. He doesn't have a hazmat suit on, doesn't have a mask. I think what he's probably just probing is to see perhaps what direction that sewer is going in case something goes down there where they might anticipate it ending up at. And that cover is very, very heavy. It takes two pretty strong guys to lift those covers off. So I can't tell if that's FBI or the sheriff's department based on what he's wearing, his protective vest and the label across there. But something made him go there. And, what we've been seeing the last couple of days, I know we've talked about this since this started, but all of these little things that they're doing in the last couple of days should have been done in the first couple of days. I mean, the fact that they weren't done and now they're going back, I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I know that the sheriff was pretty overwhelmed himself with the amount of attention and pressure that he was getting. And I think by the time they got the FBI there, the FBI had to redo everything that they should have done. And they went back to square one. So a lot of criticism is going to come down the line, regardless of how this turns out. Some of it may be justified, some of it may not, because we still don't know what they have.
Yeah. And the sheriff taking a lot of heat. He was at the Arizona Wildcats game last night. Personally, it's just a matter of optics, because the media is going to scrutinize that, and why go if you can watch it on TV while this is going on. But right back to you, Ramos, on this one. I get they're getting new information, so why not leave the crime scene tape up until she is found safe? Seems they are compromising any new potential evidence. We have seen that, Phil. Crime tape goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. They come back, they go back. What's happening there?
Well, each time it goes down, you're leaving it open for. You got to look ahead. You got to play this out. In the event that there is a terrible crime associated with this, and you end up going to court, every time you leave that crime scene and go back, you've compromised that crime scene. Unless you've got officers stationed there 24/7 to make sure nobody has access to it, then our viewer is absolutely right. Why not leave that tape up there? And we had mentioned that when they pulled off, we had said, man, it's kind of early for them to be pulling off of a crime scene, but maybe again, we don't know what they know. It turns out that they shouldn't have. So, be that as it may, they're following up on things that are coming through. How the source of this information is causing them to take these actions, we don't know what it is, and we shouldn't know, because it could lead in the investigation in a certain direction. And we're still at a loss as to any motive. Who possibly is she even still alive?
Yeah,
it's been a full week now, and there's been no mention of her health or anything like that from the bad guys, and bad guys hold the key to it.
Yeah, and she's obviously she needs those meds or she's in trouble without it. She's got a heart condition. Icicle Oxy from Turkey here. By the way, Scotland is in the house yelling at me that I never shout out Scotland. I love Scotland. I've never been to the Republic of Ireland, but I have been to Scotland and I love it. Gifting 50 memberships. So thank you to Icicle. We've got a few more of those. Dan, back to you. I mean, your background is so different than Phil Ramos or Bernard Zaper. How do you look at this case specifically, Nancy Guthrie, I guess through a different lens? I mean, you're trying to look at it and analyze it maybe differently just because of your background.
Well, and I think I go right to the worst case scenario. In fact, every time I'd sit down with someone in Iraq, I would tell whoever it was, the ambassador from France or Italy, the family member, I would be very blunt with them. And I would say, you have to start from the notion that your husband, your uncle, your son, whoever, your loved one is not coming home. I operated from the mindset that every hostage that was taken in Iraq was dead already but it came down to who grabbed you. And I ended up doing an exhaustive study tracking all these kidnapping rings, because every time a kidnapping happened, there'd be a new kidnapping named group. But we ultimately put them into 4 quadrants of Al-Qaeda, hardcore Sunni Salafists, former regime Sunnis, but a little bit more rational, more in the business model, Shia influence from Tehran, and then just random criminal gangs. And by deducing that, we could start to figure out, well, if Al-Qaeda's got you, it's going to be beheading video coming out, and so on and so forth. So for this group, for this case, this is not following the traditional kidnapping and ransom by any measure. There isn't. If you want to do a KNR, you want to get someone, you want to negotiate directly with the family. They'll usually have a KNR consultant or an FBI hostage negotiator in the room and advising the family on what to say. And there's point to point. You build good faith and trust. You establish bona fides with the proof of life. You don't pay money until you're getting the hostage back. And this notion that they're going to pay this advance is crazy. And I personally believe I'm looking at the motive. So why would you go after Savannah Guthrie's loved one? Well, yeah, she's wealthy, she has money, but I think it's the exposure, and that's what I think we're missing. That we've got to look at who would want to do this to. She's not a controversial talk show host, right? She's not a Megyn Kelly. She's not a pick any other influencer that takes one side of the political fence and gets enemies on either side. That's not her. But where has she potentially made enemies? Where has she potentially upset people? And she's famous for interviewing a lot of the Epstein survivors. Those files dropped the week prior. And what do you want to do when you want to get a bad news story off the net? You give it another bad story. So I'm not claiming it, but you got to look at everything. Or is it? Dan,
yeah, you went there. I mean, a lot of people are saying that, and it's interesting that you're going there. So I just want to, we try to stay away from politics at Surviving the Survivor, but I don't stay away from reality. And Bernard Zaper, thank you, Dan, for that. That was really interesting. He just mentioned something. The Epstein files dropped a lot of powerful people, and I'm by no means a conspiracy theorist. But what do you make of what Dan O'Shea just said? And are you still do you believe, Bernard, that this is still something sinister with quote unquote bad guys that took this woman and are holding her hostage?
That's definitively yes, because whatever the motive and intent is, you've taken somebody who's elderly from their home. They apparently got injured. You're causing millions of dollars in investigative costs. You're causing fear to that community and neighborhood. Of course, it's nefarious. It's all bad. And I'd also say that everything is on the table here. We don't know what's going on just because we're not on the other side of the investigative veil. So, I think speculation here could run the gamut, and, nothing is off the table until they develop something, specifically who's involved. And, the one thing I mentioned before, and I did it on a recent news thing too, was, this commitment to, and it was in the basics of investigation for something that's complex, especially if it gets a lot of attention. You have to have somebody that focuses on, dare me to say, the stupid, because you never dismiss the moronic. So you have somebody who's sort of gaming this out about what is like the simplest self-motivated possibility here for scenario. And does anything we know so far match that? Because it's very possible, even within an investigative team, for people to start going off the rails when they run out of possibilities and start following these theories and possibilities, and they're running around with a lot of complexity. And oftentimes we can forget that it might be very simple. I mean, bad, but simple. And so at this point, there's nothing to dismiss here yet at all. And it could be something very simple. It could be more complex. And I mean, anything could happen here. And, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and Bernard, this is easier asked than answered from Kenna Rosie with Super Chat here. Distinguished guest, how does this play out in your experience? Your opinion on how this ends, Bernard? Do you have a take on how this all ends?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to end with the death of this poor woman. And it may take some time to find who's responsible.
Wow. Not the answer most of us want to hear, but I got to be transparent in saying that almost everyone who I've asked who's once, walked in your shoes or similar shoes believes basically that to be the case here. So that is upsetting, no doubt, because Savannah Guthrie, I was watching a piece this morning just about her unbelievable faith. She lost her father, I think it was to a heart attack. She was 16 when he died, and instead of turning away from religion, she turned more into it, leaned into it. And her mother was deeply religious, and I'm sure she is praying and hoping for better news. Phil Ramos, I just want to get back to you on this drainage pipe, that they're looking at, or were looking at just a little while ago on the property of Nancy Guthrie. Does it come, do you think, because of a tip? Or did they just say, we never searched this, let's go back?
No, I don't think there was a tip involved. I think it was something that going through their checklist of things to do that weren't done in a timely manner, that was part of it. I don't know how big the property is. I don't know if it's an acre, half acre, or if it's just a building lot. So that could come into play. And, we've seen a lot of shrubbery around there that is quite thick and tall. So that's going to obscure the view from the house out and from out into the house. So there could be any manner of reasons to be looking in there, but it's certainly something that I would have expected would have been done early on in the first couple of days. But then again, we don't know what they knew. We're at such a disadvantage on trying to speculate the status of the evidence that they have, evidence that they don't have. It's a matter of, if we knew more, then we'd be able to speak more intelligently about it, but we just don't. So, based on my experience, I don't think there's much more to it than this guy looking in the hole to see, hey, well, maybe there's something in there that we missed.
Simple answer for a complicated question about what they're doing looking there. Now, the Pima County Sheriff's Department said they weren't putting anything out, but yet they put this out today. And Phil Ramos, I want to come back to you because you know the inner workings of what these law enforcement jurisdictions want to put out, what they don't. But for those listening, the Nancy Guthrie investigation is ongoing. Follow-up continues at multiple locations. No suspects, persons of interest, or vehicles have been identified. No scheduled press briefings. If any significant developments occur in the case, a press conference will be called. Don't forget, today is America's biggest national holiday, the Super Bowl. So people will be all over that today. Will they break in with the news tonight? If that happens, we're going to be on it. Phil Ramos, Fox News requested, I think this is live. This might be live footage. The COE will let us know because Fox News keeps putting up their drone. It's video from earlier today, everyone. But this is when they were looking into that drainage system that they went up there. But Phil Ramos, the sheriff, Fox News spoke to the sheriff's department. They gave them a little bit more in the statement, saying the sheriff is not granting additional one-on-one interviews. The sheriff remains the sole spokesperson for the Pima County Sheriff's Department regarding this investigation. It remains an active and ongoing investigation. Detectives and agents continue to conduct follow-up at multiple locations. On it goes. But what do you make of this line? The sheriff remains the sole spokesperson for the Pima County Sheriff's Department. What do you make of that?
Well, they just want to make sure that people know that the only one who's authorized to speak and the only one who's got enough knowledge of the case to speak is the sheriff, to dissuade all these other people from chiming in and saying, well, this and that this is what's happening, that's what's going to happen. We can only do that as our panel is doing, based on experience and based on what we know as far as things that should happen. So I think that was meant to let the public know that if you hear something from somebody else that's not authorized to speak about the investigation, disregard it. It's not coming from a reliable source. We're the only reliable source. We're the only ones that know exactly what we have and what we're going to release to the press.
Yeah, and Phil, I mean, how frustrated would you be right now if you were the lead on this? Obviously there's so many hands involved in this, but if you're the lead detective, let's say, I mean, how frustrated would you? I mean, this is a drone right here from Fox News Digital. Just that alone, scouring over your crime scene. How frustrating would this be and maddening?
Well, I would be frustrated at the lack of progress, the apparent lack of progress that's being made on the case. We're getting to the point where there just may not be any other clues to follow up on. And so once you get to that point, then you start all over again and maybe get a new set of eyes to look at the evidence that you have and so get some couple of other opinions from some experienced investigators to see if there's something you missed, because you're always going to be second guessing yourself. Man, I should have looked at this better, or I didn't think about that. You always want other opinions, especially on a case like this. So, and I think that's what's starting to happen, because if you look now at the various news organizations that are reporting, it's no longer their top story, and it's no longer filled with little tidbits of who's speaking to whom. And I think if it was me, I'd be getting pretty frustrated that I haven't made any more progress than what's been made right now.
Yeah, and maybe it has to do with what Dan said a moment ago, and I'm going to get to him in just a second. But again, this is now new. The COE bringing us new information. For those who are new, by the way, we really do have the best guests in all of true crime, which is not a testament to me. It's a testament to our guests and us putting it together. We do a live panel show Monday through Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. My mother, who's in that little logo behind me, she is a child Holocaust survivor. She's a licensed marriage therapist, and she likes to bust my you-know-what. She's like, she's tough on me, like the little league coach player whose dad is the coach. Same sort of concept. So hence the name Surviving the Survivor. The COE, she's the chief of everything. My wife, former CBS News correspondent, she runs the show. Steve Cohen books the guest. Space Coast is on the West Coast. On your way in or way out or right now, please hit that like and subscribe button. We've got an active Patreon page as well, so please take a look at that. But at the request of the Guthrie family, the Pima County Sheriff's Department will maintain a presence at Nancy Guthrie's residence for security purposes going forward. Members of the media and the public are reminded that all traffic laws and private property laws must be followed. No trespassing. They've been getting quite a few trespassing calls. I know that. And friends of ours who are on the ground there have been asked to move. But Dan, back to you. And in your world, Kash Patel, the FBI director, I know you're not an FBI agent, but government related. He is the FBI director. This is not political. They say that he had a quote unquote pre-planned trip to Tucson tomorrow, which I'm not buying for a second, the pre-planned part. But what does a guy like Kash Patel do on the ground, except maybe distract some of the federal agents who are trying to do their work?
Well, what it might be, you never want leadership showing up on the scene but again, I think it goes to the attention draw. When you have the president of the United States making a tweet about this, he's calling Savannah personally to say, we're going to give all resources. I mean, I think to the point I think Phil made earlier about the frustration that you've got every asset now available under the sun for this case. And we're not seeing any forward momentum. We're not seeing any progress. And it was already said by, the other gentleman on the panel about where I think this has already gone. And it's heartbreaking. But I think the kidnappers, I don't think it was about money in the first part. They're spinning this, and they're doing this for the media attention. I really believe this is an extortion, but it gets down to, who would have a reason to go after Savannah Guthrie? And I'm not just saying the Epstein thing is the only theory. Potentially, you could have a stalker, a psychopathic stalker, who maybe got a letter from Savannah signed, and then he kept sending in, more and more requests, and then she ignored him. And there are, in this day and age, I mean, hell, you can look on libs of TikTok video and look and realize how many people are mentally imbalanced in this country. So it could be a lot of things. So I don't want to rule out anything. But again, I think this was intentionally done, and they didn't just pick Savannah because she has the money to pay. There are plenty of wealthy Americans who can put up a multi-million-dollar ransom. So I think that's the underlying, is that I think the motivation for this was, to spread a message of terror and garner all this news attention and force the head of the FBI to come out and look into this case. I think they're getting exactly what playbook they intended when they started this abduction plan in the first place.
Yeah, and Bernard Zaper, just to pick up on that, obviously Dan O'Shea is mentioning the elephant in the room, which maybe this is tied to something much bigger. And I get these emails. Oh, you're just part of the deep state distraction of the Epstein files, which go. Trust me, no one is calling me saying, "Hey, have a podcast to distract from the Epstein files." I'm not getting those calls. People believe that we do, which is kind of nutty. But do you get the sense, and I'd like Dan's take on this too, but Bernard, do you get the sense that whoever's behind this are real professionals, in light of the fact that Dan just said it and Phil just said that we really don't appear to have any forward momentum, although we never know what we don't know?
No, I do not. In fact, I'm trending and resistant to speaking to it, that this is going to ultimately be more simple than anybody imagined. Nefarious evil, without a doubt. But in terms of reason or motivated intent, is going to be something maybe slightly unexpected. And this is, again, I'm saying I'm not going to speculate, and now I'm speculating. But, I look at it, it makes me think of two cases. The Beltway sniper case, obviously that was horrific, and there was tons of speculation around it because people were just dropping in random areas in a 3-state and district area. And investigators were working like mad to find connective issues that would give them something to build on. Ironically, one of the Beltway snipers walked up on a golf course in Tucson, Arizona, and shot a guy in the head that was playing golf.
Yeah, I think that's where it started, and a lot of people don't know that. Yeah, crazy.
And so but in Phoenix, Arizona, they had two serial homicide cases. One was a sexual assault with homicide that were going on simultaneously. And it was affecting a number of different municipalities. But I mean, they had to put a lot of investigator horsepower on there. But they did a great job of focusing on patterns and continuation. They had a lot of information from what the suspects are doing. When you look at this case, you have something, very little is revealed about the person or people that have done this. They have physical evidence of some type, but they may not have anything that is really triggering them of value. The things that law enforcement would capture today in contemporary investigations, which multiply upon itself. One piece of information gives you another and another and another. If they did something very simple and they were lucky enough not to leave like breadcrumbs, this is a very difficult and challenging thing, particularly if they're never going to reveal themselves. If there never is a ransom note, a real one, or an extortion attempt or something else, and it could be, like let's say you have a hate motive or a distraction motive or whatever it is. I mean, this is a tough thing. It's like, when you look at it, an actual kidnapping has to be treated like a homicide from the very first moment. I mean, once they determine that a missing person was taken against their will, or it's a minor, that didn't disappear or whatever, it has to be treated in the same way, which I think they're doing that now in retrospect. But, everything is on the table for this. And I think just because of, I would say, the precedent of criminal cases and criminal activity and mental acuity in the United States, that this is going to be something far less fetched than what the current speculation is.
Interesting. I think I tend to agree with that. And right on cue, Phil Ramos from Miss Cece, and I put a tweet out about this. Look, Ashley Banfield's getting a lot of heat. I like her. I'm friendly with her. I've been on her show. I think she has very good sources, and it would not surprise me at all if we end up circling back somehow to family or someone in the inner circle. Lewis, Phil Ramos, had a super chat up before. Whoever's doing this, do you believe that they have inside help? There's been speculation that whoever is behind this is locally in Tucson, because they seem to be revealing things about That's the drone camera you're looking at, the actual control. But because they seem to be watching local Tucson news. What's your guess, Phil Ramos? Your best guess right now, and I know it's just that. Whoever's doing this, are they working together? Is there more than one of them? Are they getting help from the inside somehow?
Well, I have two trains of thought on that, and they both go to motive. If this was truly an intended kidnapping with, a really bad plan for the ransom demand, then it would have to be somebody that was close enough to the family to know that this is where an important person's relative lives. In other words, who knows where Savannah's family lives, and did they know that this is where that Nancy was Savannah's mother? So you'd have to know that if you were putting a plan into effect for a ransom or kidnapping for that purpose. The other side of the coin, and I'm kind of leaning towards this one because Phil Waters and I talked about it a couple of days ago. This could be as simple as a home invasion gone wrong, and that she came home, went through her normal course, and all of a sudden these knuckleheads decided, well, let's break into this house and see what we can get. And she stood up for herself, and it went really bad, really quickly, and that's where they're at. And that would.
And then Phil, what are all these ransom notes? That's just them covering up their tracks, trying to make it seem bigger than what it is?
Yeah, it's just fodder. It's distraction, trying to keep the cops away from what really happened and make them think it's more sophisticated, and that's what it was about. Because if you think about it, this was a very poorly planned kidnapping and ransoms, quote unquote ransom. There was just no plan in place for that. Particularly taking care of the victim. If you intend on keeping her healthy so that you can have proof of life so that you can get your ransom money, they had no clue of how to do that, and they didn't do it. And that's my fear. I think my fear is that this was done very poorly, and that she didn't survive the first few hours after this happened. My gut just tells me that's what it was.
And Phil Ramos has reason to have gut instincts. He did this for 35 plus years. Keep that in mind when we finally get the answer. It was just something as simple as a home invasion gone bad by, as Phil says, two knuckleheads in Tucson. Go ahead, Dan O'Shea.
I have a question for Phil. Again, this is your lane, not mine, but the images of the blood spatter at the front, right? The drops. That's more than just a little bit of blood. And I'm thinking, first off, 84-year-old woman, how do you bloody someone up without using a knife? You hit them hard enough in the nose. That's the only way you're going to get that kind of a blood spatter. What was your initial thought about how much blood was there? And that, because that's why I thought from day one that this probably went pear-shaped, like you said, a home invasion that went pear-shaped immediately. And now, what no one wanted to talk about in the first 2 or 3 days, that she wasn't still alive. What's your take on that right there that he's got up on the screen? I'm curious.
Yeah, so as we were looking at that initially, what I observed was that the blood spatter didn't have any directionality to it. In other words, whoever was bleeding was still as the blood was coming off their body and landing, because you look at perfect little squares or perfect little circles. If this happened while they were taking her out of the house and getting her to a vehicle, then there'd be some directionality to it. The blood would tell you which direction the person bleeding was going. So, and then there's two types of blood spatter on there. There's the straight down drops, and then there's an area of what almost looks like high velocity mist, but we know it's not high velocity mist because there was no, well, we don't know that, but high velocity mist comes from a traumatic impact or blow to the body that's going to spray blood out. So yeah, right there. So at the top of the frame there, you can see there's discolored areas with smaller droplets. And it almost looks like those smaller droplets may have some directionality to them. But
is that coming out of the nose potentially? I mean, where else would that kind of drip coming from? Nose or where?
Yeah, it could be. It could be coming from the nose because of the amount of blood and the spacing of the blood droplets. If this was a blunt force trauma wound, going to have to be pretty big to have that kind of blood spatter. And I would say it was either from the nose or maybe even from her mouth if they tried to hit her and busted her lip or something like that.
Yeah, Bernard, any take on your end on this blood image that we're looking at here?
I have to ask an embarrassing question. Have they confirmed that the blood is hers? They have.
Blood goes back. Yeah, the blood goes back to her. Great question.
Yeah, because I was at the originally not knowing that this was a little few days ago that whoever was dismantling that ring alarm or the camera or whatever could have cut themselves standing there bleeding like an idiot, in the process of trying to destroy the camera or whatnot. But nothing is good from an 84-year-old woman bleeding any volume like that in the middle of the night, standing outside of her home. So yeah, it goes back to the the feared premise.
Bernard, there was a super chat, and forgive me, I forget who it was from, but asking, why would they have sent her home? And I mean, I don't know that I wouldn't do this, but they put the mother in an Uber for a 10-minute drive home, and people are questioning that, was there something more sinister involved? But do you see anything that stands out to you about that? I mean, my mother lives about 20 minutes from me, 15 minutes, and she'll periodically Uber if she doesn't want to drive at night at 86.
Again, my answer to speculation is if you just examine your own life and the process and how we do things, most of which is by routine, some of which is, say, just out of convenience, and it seems non-threatening or concerning or whatnot. But if you put in this ominous thing of a kidnapping or a person going missing, then those individual things that we take for granted as nothing now become a moment of vulnerability, a lack of care. So I don't give a lot to that. And it's only going to have relevance to what actually happened here or is happening.
Damn happy to be here. Yeah, Phil, jump right in. But real quick, the ransom demands in Miss Guthrie's abduction, there is no proof that they're definitively connected, Phil. Is that how you understand it?
Yeah.
In other words, one ransom was already a hoax. They say that the other ransom is legit. So I don't know, but it's possible that they're not connected, I suppose. But Phil, go ahead.
This information that you just mentioned that they had an Uber take her home. When did we find that out?
That was reported somewhat earlier on. Hold on. Okay, let me see here. Uber was to Annie's house, not at night to Nancy's house. So STS Nation, correct me here. She took an Uber to the home. Is that what we're saying? To get her? I thought it was to drop her back off. So no, because that was family that dropped her back off at the house. So I guess the Uber's on the way there, and Phil, they spoke to the Uber driver. But what do you do with an Uber driver?
Well, just see, some of them have videos in their units, in their cars, and they'll save them for a little bit. You would want that, certainly, and then just interview the driver about the details of the transportation. Where'd you pick her up? What'd you talk about? Where'd you go? How long did it take? Just general conversation like that.
Uber took her there. Obviously, the son-in-law took him home, and that's how the whole son-in-law / sister theory developed. Annalie Finch giving us a super chat here. Thank you to that. Phil, I want you to weigh in on this, but this is Dan's sort of wheelhouse here. So another ransom communication set a deadline of tomorrow. That is soon, since it's 4:52 on the East Coast here, the United States of America, and tomorrow would be in about 7 hours. So, Dan, what could authorities be doing? I mean, we've got some split takes here. Bernard seems to think that these are not professionals. Phil Ramos thinks it could be something as simple as a home invasion gone bad. But assuming these are real hostage takers, the kind of people you dealt with overseas, what do you do with another deadline 7 hours away?
We have those deadlines every time an Al Qaeda and not always Al Qaeda, but anytime one of these groups wanted to step up the game on some of these high profile kidnappings, they'd put out a video where the hostage would be pleading for their life and they'd give a deadline. And that happened a lot. And again, 50% of the time, those deadlines were met. And like I said, if a group like Al Qaeda had you were going to be dealing with an execution video that would come out within generally 48 to 72 hours. But other groups would play that game. They play in the fear game that would have been prompted by the Al Qaeda network. And it always came down to the group that grabbed you and their motivations and their ideology. But we had multiple deadlines on multiple high profile cases where that deadline would come. There would be a presumption that the hostage had been killed. And then it was really done to put pressure, because behind the scenes, they were negotiating with, say, the Italian government or the French government, and they wanted to get the multi-million-dollar ransoms. And it was effective, because the average payout on these high-profile international cases started at $1 million and went up from there. And $1 million can buy a lot of RPGs, AK-47s, and finance suicide bombers on Route Irish. So kidnapping became a very effective fundraising tool, and then stepping up and playing the game with these hostage videos became part and parcel of a case. But it didn't always mean again, I think we know the worst case scenario we think has already happened, but I don't think that would matter, this 5 o'clock deadline, because I think that's going to come and go. They wanted to get a statement from Savannah, like she did, saying we will pay the ransom. And again, I think that, I can't remember which one of your colleagues brought it up, but you're right. I think this is probably maybe way more complex than initially envisioned. But, right now, whoever was involved, they're trying to just create as far a distance away from them and any connection. And that's why I think they're throwing out all this, white noise with these deadlines and whatnot. And I think that could be part of their strategy too.
Yeah. And Bernard, just to piggyback what Dan is talking about, and everyone's jumping down our throat about the Uber, but we're live, and we've been covering this day in and day out. The Uber was to the house, and on the way back, the reason Ashley went live with her story was the thought process was that maybe the son-in-law, Annie's husband, had something to do with it, because he was the last one to see her at the drop-off. But time to take a chill pill, everybody. Ransom, $6 million, and FBI reward $50,000 for info. That's what I was getting to, Bernard. The alleged amount in the ransom is $6 million. What does that figure say to you? I mean, and I'll go back to Dan too. I mean, that sounds like something that maybe, in today's day and age, is that crazy amount of money? It's a lot of money. It's a ton of money, but it's not, 500 million or 100 million, which is, for some Americans who are billionaires, disposable income. But what do you make of this $6 million figure?
Again, forgive me, but I put it all back to speculation. The fact that there's nothing that, they're saying, I don't know what they're saying. If you have a ransom demand, you have to have some vehicle in which it gets paid. There has to be something that builds this bridge. There has to be something that ties it. I don't know how anybody could say we know it's from them. They don't know who them is. So that's even speculation.
Yeah.
You look at you go to Guatemala, for example. Mm-hmm. One person, there's a rumor that somebody raped somebody's daughter. Mm-hmm. In an hour, that guy is set on fire in the streets and burned to death. Mm-hmm. And of course, if it was investigated, the guy wasn't even there when it happened. It was somebody else, because the due process is vigilantism oftentimes. Mm-hmm. And so the speculation on the outside of the investigation is really the same thing. People are taking snippets and pieces of information, and it's romanticizing it in a way because it sounds like something. I haven't heard or see anything that this $6 million demand is from them. They don't know who them is. So unless there is something in there that only a person that came to the house or has had physical contact with this woman since she got back to her home that night would know, there's no way to determine that that's in fact legitimate. So I would give any validity regardless of the amount, because what is saying that this actually has anything to do with this thing at all? So again, I apologize, but
I hear you, and I appreciate your honesty, because most people should not be speculating. I mean, at this point, with knowing as little as most of us do, a lot of us, are in that trap. But and it's my fault 'cause I'm asking the questions. But Dan, back to you. I mean, and then Duramo, $6 million. You were talking about a woman in Iraq or Afghanistan, wherever it was, who said she only had 10,000 to give. I mean, what do you make of the $6 million figure?
Well, we had ransoms averaging about $1 million for European up, and the largest ransom demand was for Roy Hallam's that we got. And it was for $12 million, and this was 20 years ago. And so that's 6 million to 12. That's not outside of the range. But what I did learn that the majority of the initial asking price, again, but we're not dealing with a traditional K&R because they're not negotiating in good faith directly with the family or the representative. But that normally a ransom demand of say 6 million over the course of weeks and months, when the negotiator negotiates it down, because if you settle right away, you kind of screw yourself, and then you may get another ransom demand on top of the one that you just paid out. So you got to drag this out. And there's a strategy where the K&R consultant makes it so hard that when they finally get them down to the final number, the kidnappers are so exhausted they don't want to ever deal with this family or this company again. And the rule of thumb was that the initial asking price, say this 6 million, it settles for 10%. So that 6 million could ultimately settle for 600,000 in a ransom payment. But I think it's been already pointed out by my co-guests on here. I don't think we're dealing with an honest broker. And I think this 6 million is just another, loose number that's out there. And I think it's just distracting from, maybe what's really happening here in this case, and possibly a home invasion that went wrong.
Yeah. Ayskull Aksu here from Turkey. You think elderly people living alone in large properties is safe at all and potentially make them? I mean, I'll answer that. Adults have, my mom, who's 86, basically says when you turn a certain age, people think you're invisible because of that age. But life goes on. And I've said this before. There are 86-year-olds and 86-year-olds. My mom is very with it, totally independent. And, she happens to live in a building where there's security, which is great for her. Not everyone has that. But I think, it's it's dependent on who the person is and how they are at whatever age they are. I put a tweet out about Occam's razor yesterday, suggests the simplest explanation, requiring the fewest assumptions is usually the best. Son-in-law did it, and Ransom is a fraud. I don't know that the son-in-law did it, but Phil Ramos, I haven't had you on since we saw this latest video. And so let me play that. This was last night. This is again the Guthries. This time I think it was a 20-second video. We play it twice here with 39 words. Very succinct, terse, to the point. We'll watch it and break it, and Phil will break this down.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay. We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
One thing I notice over and over, Phil, is I'm playing it without the sound now, is she doesn't say she or our mother is very valuable or dear to us. She says it is, almost like a passive, like, they know something. Your thoughts on this short video?
Well, there's two things here. The first thing that I noticed was neither of them have their prepared statements in front of them like they did the first two times. And this is from the heart. And you could just see the resignation on their faces. They're throwing in the towel. And there comes a time, and Dan can speak to this much better than I can, but there comes a time in our investigations where you're going to call the bad guy's bluff. So you're going to say, all right, hey, we got the money. Let us know where to put it, but you don't get a penny until you can prove that she's alive. Look at the sister. I mean, the sister is just
Yeah, I mean, Phil, that's what is your read? I mean, you've read so much body language. I know you're not a behavioral expert, but you really are. What do you read into this?
She's completely given up hope. She's accepting the fact that mom's not coming home, and there may even be a some sort of guilt associated with that. And even look at the pilot, man. He's got ice in his veins, and even he is like got his head down and just taking a deep breath. They're I think they believe this is their last shot, and I agree.
Wow, heavy stuff. Thank God for the Super Bowl tonight. And whether you love him or hate him, you got Bad Bunny to distract us from some horrible true crime. And I won't understand a word because it's all in Spanish apparently, but the COE will. Dan, what about that? I mean, what about calling the bluff? Do you guys do that when you're in Iraq and Afghanistan? Do you say, hey, you know what? Pay up. We'll pay up, but let me see proof of life. When do you go ahead and do that?
Well, to be frank, you don't get on the phone in Iraq. If I got on the phone and they heard an American, they'd kill the hostage immediately. So it was all like the one incident I told you about. I advised her, and then she obviously did the negotiation because for a host of reasons. But the call the bluff, because the game we were playing is, the U.S. was not into paying ransoms. So there wasn't going to be a ransom exchange for the U.S. side. But I advised literally hundreds of other kidnappings. And I'd say, listen, if you want to get your hostage back, you're going to pay a ransom. And this is the game. But for the U.S. option was, we're going to go rescue the hostage. So we would encourage that there would be dialogue between the kidnapping ring and whoever the family is. We'd be tracing these calls and correlating and doing certain things we can do with cell phones. I won't get into it here. But our whole mission was to get a target package and launch a rescue. And the rescue is doing a hostage rescue comes down to three very simple things. Number one, you want proof of life. You're not going to risk the National Mission Force to go rescue a dead body. Number two, you want a 10-digit grid, meaning the exact location in the exact neighborhood, not just the house, but what room in the house, on what floor, and what compartment, because you needed 100% intelligence to provide element of surprise, get your forces onto the verge of the target, because there's the presumption was an armed guard with an AK-47 would be standing within arm's reach or a room away from the hostages wherever they're being held. So you need to get that element of surprise. But third, and sometimes the hardest thing to get, was the approval to launch a hostage rescue, to actually send in our nation's finest special operations forces for when it comes to hostage rescue. And we got 2 units, do it better than anyone in the world, and they can go anywhere at any time and pull off the mission. And I found that was the third, generally getting the approvals by the generals and the ambassadors to say, okay, go launch that mission. Many times that was the hardest thing to get because there was never 100% intelligence. And in my 2 years in Iraq, out of those 40 American hostages, considering we had 150,000 troops and contractors in Iraq, including the greatest special operations capability and the intelligence capability on the planet. And of those 40 Americans taken hostage, you guys want to guess how many were actually rescued by the National Mission Force? Anyone want to take a wild guess?
Not me. Throw out a number. Bernard, you want to throw out a number?
No way.
Dan, tell us.
1 American. In my 2 years, only 1 got rescued deliberately. And that's how hard it is to find that needle in a haystack, to actually find. People have no idea how hard it is to find the location of a hostage, even when you have every asset available. So that's why, the fact that they've been able to keep her hidden from the, 8 days onto this with such intensive national media and law enforcement focus, it is much harder to find people if you don't want them to be found than people even realize.
Yeah. I just want to let everybody know again, we won't be back on tonight, barring breaking news, which means I'll definitely be back on tonight, because anytime I say that, I'm back. So Super Bowl or no Super Bowl, we will be back. There are all kinds of rumors circulating out there. There are a few reporters who are excellent, who are on the ground out there. Michael Ruiz, Fox News, is one of them. If you want to follow him on Twitter, Brian Enton, a friend of mine in the COE, he's out there. He's, you don't get any better than Brian, but I would look to those people before you're looking, to to others, let's say, just to make sure you're getting the right information. But we will come back if there's breaking news. There's one other thing I do want to get to, and then we'll get final thoughts. And Phil Ramos, this is your world again. Authorities not only reportedly, but we have video of them returning to Savannah Guthrie's sister's home last night, Annie. And of course, she's been the focal point of some of this with her husband. Apparently, they left with gloves and brown bags. They were taking photos because reporters saw them snapping away with a flash going off. What could be going on there? This is not the first time they were back there, but they were back there for like a 3-hour period last night, and that raised a lot of eyebrows.
It's hard to say. The gloves are just standard procedure. You always wear gloves when you're doing a search, so you don't leave your DNA somewhere, your touch DNA. The bag, it could contain anything. If it wasn't sealed, then there's an indication that it was just something they wanted to look at versus direct hard evidence. And, you just take pictures of what you're doing and where you're at. So that all of that is just standard. I wouldn't read anything into it.
All right. Bernard Zaper, ATF special agent in charge, retired. Love having him on. He has a very unique take. 3 Delta is his company there over his left shoulder. Bernard, from your standpoint, what are you most interested, I guess, in either like a nugget of information that you would like to know about this case that would help you? Like if you could magically wave a wand and say, hey, I want to know this, what would that be to help you understand the overall case better? And your final thoughts.
What I want to know best is that all the investigative team are cooperating, communicating, and there is no withholding of information. There is no ego involved. They're doing this professionally, and nothing goes unturned, and that they're cooperating, working together. That's the best possible outcome. So, the seemingly starts and stops, I would want all that to just be part of an ongoing good process, and that they're working together in the best possible way. That sounds like something we should expect. And I hope very much so that that's the case, because that's the only chance of finding out what has happened here.
I've joked for the last 2 years that one day we'll be so big, we will be the Super Bowl halftime show. And tonight, it actually might happen if there's breaking news. We just won't be at the Super Bowl, if you get what I mean. But we'll still be the Super Bowl halftime show. Dan O'Shea, a real American hero, this guy. Getting rid of bad guys in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and I'm sure many, many other places around the world. Before your final thoughts, Dan, when you were like a 15-year-old kid in high school, did you say to yourself, hey, I need to become a Navy SEAL? How does someone have that mindset? How did you end up becoming a SEAL?
Well, first off, I'm so old that the Navy SEAL, I showed up at the Naval Academy in 1987. Plebe summer, I did this little PT competition, pull-up, push-up, sit-ups, and I was the iron plebe of the company. And when my roommate, who was prior Navy, found out I had a water polo swimming background, he said, hey, man, do you want to be a Navy SEAL? And I looked at him and I go, what the fuck's a Navy SEAL? And this was before Charlie Sheen and all the movies and books. So, I came about it, honestly, because of a guy, John Patrick Connors. He was on I carry his wristlet, I have for years. And it was his story that motivated me. He was a young SEAL officer killed in Patia. And it was his story that motivated me my senior at the Naval Academy to go down the path. And I just never looked back. But, I can tell you this, anyone watching this show, you can be 5'0", barely 100 pounds wrestling a 101 and at like 5'1" as a freshman. And you can still go on and go become a Green Beret, a Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, or MARSOC Raider. So don't let size deter what your mind and body can conceive. You can achieve it. That's all I'll say about that.
Wow, that's amazing. And to me, the most interesting part, the most incredible part about the SEALs and other special ops is just Dan, I tell my kids, you got to train your brain. And how powerful, give a message for my kids here, Dan O'Shea. I mean, how powerful is that brain? My daughter is scared of a mouse running across in front of the house. How powerful is that human brain to be able to train it to be strong?
Mindset's everything. It is everything. when you start up your buds class, there's 100, we had 125 odd guys class up, and they always say, look to your left, look to your right. Two out of three of you won't be here. And you look around, you try and make bets of who's going to make it, who's not. And it isn't the biggest, the fastest, the tallest. You'd be surprised. But the one thing that every SEAL, every Green Beret, every Ranger, every Raider has is fire in the gut. And that comes with, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And it's just so true. But it's mental, because you get through buds, not through physical strength. It's the mental, getting over the adversity, the cold, the hell weeks, and all the rest of it. But it's a mind game. It always comes down to the mind, and you got to sharpen the mind. You have to put it through adversity, and iron sharpens iron, and that's why you take on challenges, take on hard things, because it makes you hard. And then when you get confronted with those challenges in life, you look, a guy that went through the training with my background, you look at everything else as like, I've been in worse situations. I can handle this. And that's the value of it. So that's why being a SEAL is like being a quest to like become a Zen Buddhist. And it just happens to be a little bit more physical, but the mental piece is absolutely essential. There aren't anyone that isn't. The perception of our community, or at least the military, is that they're not smart guys. Let me tell you, the smartest individuals. I've met a lot of Harvard Ivy League graduates that don't have common sense and kind of navigate themselves out of a freaking shoebox. But I've worked with E4s, E5s that have inherent smarts and wits about them, especially in our special operations community.
Unbelievably well said. And COE, I'm cutting that soundbite from my kids, and for no one else but from my kids. So make sure we cut that. Huge thanks to an American hero, Dan O'Shea, and Phil Ramos. You get the last word here. I have a weird feeling we're going to get something breaking tonight, but I sniffed around as I always do, and I was reaching out to a lot of guys like you, law enforcement, retired FBI, and the consensus is that they're not that close right now. Do you feel that way? What are you most curious about, and your final thoughts?
Yeah, let me answer a question that one of our guests had before that we didn't get a chance to answer. It was about the blood spatter. She asked if the position of the blood spatter would indicate the position of the body, and the quick answer to that is no, it doesn't. It depends on where the blood is coming from and the location and position of the body before you could make any kind of determination on that. So, I hate to keep saying this because I don't want to be in the bad news business. When we're in homicide, we're always in the bad news business. We never have any good news for anybody. I think that she has been, I think she's been dead for a while. I think all this ransom stuff is just crap that these knuckleheads are trying to put out there to throw the cops off the trail. And hopefully, the only thing you can hope for right now is that she's found in a shorter period of time than longer, and make it easier on the family. You look at those three kids, Savannah and her siblings, and they're just broken. They are broken people, and there's not going to be any peace for them for a very long time.
Wise words. They say Phil is the voice of reason, and he certainly is. Our hearts, I keep saying this, and thoughts and prayers go out to Nancy Guthrie and the kids, Savannah, Cameron, and Annie. They're being tortured in front of the world in real time, which is just horrific. There's no other way to say it other than that they're being tortured, and it is absolutely horrible. If anything breaks, we'll be back tonight. Otherwise, everyone enjoy the Super Bowl. John Singer, our best guest, he's out there rooting for the Patriots, and I offered him some encouraging words, but then he's like, I don't want those words because you're a Giants and a Jets fan. So now I'm taking them back, and I'm rooting for the Seahawks in a big way, even though Singer spent all the money to go out there. But who cares? Go Hawks. Hope they win. It is the national American holiday. Love you all. Dan, you're in Florida, I think. Love you, Florida. Love you, Arizona. Love you, Vegas, and love you, Tucson, Arizona. And let's get Nancy Guthrie back sooner than later. Guess, stick around 1 second for me so I can thank you, and we'll see you soon, everybody.